Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Well, Tony, it's the middle of February, and it's 50-something degrees outside, and I'm inside recording a podcast with you, so I feel like I'm making the best possible use of my time. How about you, bud? How are you doing today?
Doing pretty well, but, tomorrow it's supposed to be even warmer, so are you going to be doing a podcast then as well?
Well, as someone who hosts a daily podcast, the answer to that question is yes. I probably will be doing a podcast of some sort tomorrow, but
that's too
maybe
bad.
I'll do it outside.
There you go. Hey, some ambiance wouldn't be bad. Hey, do you know who was born 110 years ago today?
It was Woody Hayes. Wayne Woodrow Hayes was born on Valentine's Day. Was that 110 years ago?
You're right. That's not who I was thinking of, but again, definitely February 14th is Woody's birthday. Mel Allen
how about
my world of This Week in Baseball fame and nothing before that. No decades and decades of calling baseball. He's only This Week in Baseball to me as an 80s child.
Yeah, I saw the closing credits to a This Week in Baseball episode on Twitter at one point. Someone had just put like the last 30 seconds of that music. And if you are a child of the 80s who watch baseball, you know the music I'm talking about. It was just like, wow, this is an entire nostalgia trip. The Woody Hayes birthday is one of my favorite Ohio State factoids because Woody and Bo were both born on national holidays. Woody was born on Valentine's Day and Bo Schembechler born on April Fool's Day. So always something that gets a kick out of Ohio State fans. So
yeah, so happy birthday to everybody, including those of you out there also celebrating this. And I'm not even going to try to advise people on what they should have gotten. It's too late. I'll just let you know right now. It is too late. If you're going to try to go to Kroger to find some flowers, way too late. Like it's a sad selection. Not that I've done that. I've just seen that in the past. Mother's Day and like Valentine's Day, like imagine it's a post-apocalyptic world, and like you're just going through a store and you've got like a can of Spam and like a lighter, and that's the only thing in the store. That's basically what you've got now in terms of flower selection or chocolate selection. So good luck with that. Plan ahead. You should have planned ahead. That's all I'm saying.
I like that you're talking about this like, well, can you imagine? It's like, yeah, we were all around for 2020. We all remember what it's like to go in and like, what? There's no anything in here anymore. How is that possible? Yes. Am I in the Eastern Bloc? No, just a worldwide global pandemic. Yes, it's fine. It'll all be fine. My wife was kind enough to suggest a Valentine's event, like what we could do for Valentine's Day. She goes, well, the Blue Jackets are home that night. It was like, say no more. I will make those dreams come true. So we were going to go watch the Blue Jackets, and my children will be rooting for the Blue Jackets. I will be quietly rooting for them to improve their chances of getting Connor Bedard. Should be a lot of fun.
Just yelling at the kids, pipe down. We're not rooting for the Jackets.
No, that's bad. You don't want to hear the cannon at all. No, shh. That's the sound of your draft pick your lottery chances getting worse. Stop that.
Shooting out of the building as we speak. So Tom, let's get into this football thing. This topic of the show. As everybody knows, we started our positional spring preview shows last week. We did, I don't even remember. I think there's some safeties and some quarterbacks, if I recall. And so now we are doing today's episode.
Maybe.
I'm pretty sure, Tom. I'm not entirely sure. Just pretty sure. Today I know what we're doing, though, so this is good. We're talking about the pass catchers, the receivers and the tight ends for Ohio State. And I think the first thing we should talk about is the fact that Julian Fleming and Emeka Egbuka are out. How much do we know? Like, how much was Emeka Egbuka hindered by this long thing that he's been dealing with all season long, or how long was it? I'm not sure, but they got that out of him when clearly he needed some sort of a cleanup, and so he's getting that now. Julian Fleming is always dealing with something always needs cleaned up, and so they're taking care of that. Obviously, both of those guys are expected back. And I'm not sure if Ryan Day said or somebody mentioned, like, not everybody's necessarily going to be out all spring, and it wasn't these two guys, but there's some other positions where they could be back. Maybe Travion, I'm not sure, but so those two guys are out. Tight ends, it's been so long since we've seen the injury report. Everybody's good at tight end, right?
I believe so.
Should have done some show prep, Tom. This is on you. No, I think everybody's good.
I don't believe I heard any tight ends on that list, but I might be wrong. I believe Joe Royer's back. He was out for big chunks of last year, but he should be back. I think they should have pretty much everyone back. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting year at tight end. The year of the tight end, some might say. I don't know if I would say that personally. We need to dive into this a little bit more, but that is a spot where it feels like it's Cade Stover and then someone.
It's Joe Royer or G. Scott, I guess is what the math is. It's just which of those two players emerges, and then is it one over the other, or is it an and or rather than a separation? Like, is Joe Royer always the first guy in, or is G. Scott always the first guy in? So I think I would expect all three of those guys to get reps with the ones. And Tom, I'm looking, and no, there are no tight ends that are going to be out. So at this point, everybody is good. But I would expect you don't need Cade Stover to do a whole bunch. So I would expect everybody to get some reps with the ones. I think you need to see more from like a Sam Hart. This is, I think, a big spring for him. You haven't really heard anything from him, and he got some time in what was it, the Georgia game, where they were down so many guys, and he was actually in there at that point. So this is an opportunity. But it may or may not be an opportunity, but he better make it an opportunity to continue to push, because they're going to be looking for guys to use. You lose Mitch Rossi, and I don't know that anybody really. I don't know how they fill that. We've talked about Zach Herbstreit in the past, but this is a pretty big spring for Sam Hart. Bennett Christian still has time, but you've got a top three, and then somebody else needs to maybe find their way in there.
Right. Well, and they have different roles too, where, you mentioned the Mitch Rossi spot. Like, who can fill the Mitch Rossi spot? Because Zach Herbstreit feels like he might be the answer there, but I think he played about 4 snaps last year. So if he's going to play, if that's going to be his job or his role on the team this year, it's a pretty big spring for him then too, because you've got to go from guy who really didn't play a whole heck of a lot last year to guy who's taking on a pretty significant role. They're going to have, there are going to be other guys who play, because they played a lot of tight ends last year. You saw a bunch of Cade Stover, you saw a bunch of G. Scott, you saw a bunch of Mitch Rossi last year. You would have seen a lot of Joe Royer, I think, if Joe Royer didn't have, injury and some family stuff going on. So there are plenty of opportunities there to get on the field. And then it's just, which of those guys? Is it Sam Hart? Is it Bennett Christian? Does Jelani Thurman come in and he can really present something that no one else no one else on the team can do, where he's more of a, he feels like he's maybe more of a receiving threat than a, blocking Mitch Rossi type. But, does he maybe present some kind of a unique skill set that they can use? It's, I think you're right in terms of this baby being Sam Hart as the guy with the most on the line this spring in terms of like, what's your future role at this program going to be? But it feels like you could see, Bennett Christian, someone who came in and they thought was, maybe big enough and strong enough to handle some of the blocking stuff they're going to ask him to do. Maybe this is the year he can take that next step. Maybe it's Zach Herbstreit. Maybe it's Jelani Thurman. There's a lot of names in the mix here, and you could kind of see just about any of them taking on some kind of a role there.
I think the Jelani Thurman thing is they bring in guys like him a lot, and the expectation is, you can just throw to him. But they always make those guys, you have to be able to block before you can catch. And so, yeah, he comes in as this remarkable top 100 athlete, but they're not just going to throw to him. They're not just going to put him out as a flex. Like, he's going to have to learn everything else before they even get to that point. So, like, he's in for the spring, which is good, but I think we've seen it too many times where that guy just takes a long time to get better, get stronger. You just go back to the Jeremy Ruckert example, and it's never as just like, boom, he's going to hit the ground running just like you would expect, because they have, as they say, on one play, you got to be able to pass block against Chase Young. On the other, you got to be able to get open against Jeff Okuda. So that's a lot to ask of anybody, let alone a true freshman. Before we move to before we start talking about the wide receivers, we've got a couple of tight end questions. Let's just knock those out.
All right, let's start with the first one from @DawsonDavid_. Any thoughts on potential production from the tight end 2 and who most likely fills that role?
If the starter is getting 30 catches or 35 catches in Cade Stover, the number 2 guy, if there's a one, number 1, number 2, Tom, you catch that? If there's a number 1, number 2 all season long, I don't know that you're expecting more than 10 or 15 catches from that guy. Like the number 2 tight end this past year was, statistically, it was G. Scott with 5 catches. So, I think I would expect more than that, but that's where they are this year, or in 2022. In 2021, the number 2 tight end caught 5 passes. So there's this theme here where the number 2 tight end catches 5 passes. So my prediction, in terms of production for the TE2, I will say 5 catches. And since in 2021, there are 2 different guys with those 5 catches, I'll say both Joe Royer and G. Scott can have 5 catches. How's that?
That seems, if you're splitting it between those two, 5 might be about right. Realistically, between the 2 of them, 10, 12, 15 on the outside is probably about right for the 2 of them. And, we'll see how those reps end up getting split up. There's, it's a football team. Someone's going to get hurt. Someone's going to, turn an ankle, whatever, and not be able to go, or pull a hamstring. Like this is kind of how it works. But yeah, I think in terms of whoever is behind Cade Stover, assuming Cade Stover is healthy and plays the full season as sort of TE1, that's probably about right. 10, 12-ish for, those 2 backup guys, something in that range.
Do you know who, how many catches the number 2 tight end finished with in 2020?
Number 2 tight end in 2020. So are we count? I guess the question is Luke Farrell or Jeremy Ruckert, who was the number 2 tight end, because that was the year that they had 3 tight end touchdowns in the Sugar Bowl, but they played fewer games. So I'm going to say the second guy caught 9.
5.
Ugh. Eventually, I'm going to pick up on the pattern here, and then you're really going to be in trouble. I'd like to change my answer on the number for the number 2 tight end. I predict he will score exactly 5 catches this year. That's I forget what you said, but that's my answer now.
2019. Would you care to take a guess what the TE2 caught that year in 2019?
See, this is one of these annoying things where if I say 5, it's definitely going to be like 17 or 0. And if I don't say 5, it's going to be like, you moron, haven't you figured this out yet? So I'm going to say 5, but I'm going to do it with a little bit of a skeptical eye.
Oh, no, it was 7. It's way off. Way more than 5. So dumb guess on your part.
Yeah, apparently, yes. I should just stop talking about the tight ends. But hey, we got one more question about the tight ends. It's from William McMillan. It's actually a 2-parter. How will the play calls of Coach Hartline affect the 2023 tight ends? And are we in the middle of the decade of the tight end? The second one, obviously, yes. When you have basically, 10 consecutive years of the tight end, it feels like that probably is going to be the decade of the tight end. As far as the play calls, I don't know that I'm expecting a dramatically different offense this year. So I think you're going to have, you've got substantially the same running backs coming back. You're going to see maybe some differences in the running game as Justin Fry maybe takes more of a role there in terms of the types of running plays they're calling and the running scheme on the whole. But are you expecting a big dramatic difference in the offensive system? You're keeping, everything is basically stayed internal. You're replacing Kevin Wilson with another guy who was on the staff last year. Ryan Day is still there to kind of oversee everything. I'm not, I think I would expect largely the same kind of productivity because I'm expecting largely the same kind of offense.
Yeah, that's what I'm expecting as well. I do wonder if maybe you see more 11 personnel with no longer Kevin Wilson as being the OC and Kevin Wilson being the tight ends coach as well, wanting to put a bunch of tight ends on the field. I'm only throwing that out there now, even though I don't necessarily see that. This is still Ryan Day's offense, and they'll put it together during the week. So I'm not expecting the receivers coach, who is now the offensive coordinator, to call more plays that lead to earlier progressions for the tight ends. I think it all comes down to if that's the way the game plan goes during the week, if that's where they can attack defenses, and if that's because, well, it's a lot easier to... The tight ends are going to be more open than Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka based on the way the defense is going to scheme them up. Then maybe you see more, but I still think they're going to have... The progressions are going to be very Marvin Harrison, Emeka Egbuka heavy, and rarely is the tight end in the top two from what we've seen based on forever. And so I don't see that changing now. No. I don't... Like you said, Tom, it's the offense is the offense, and I still think it'll come down to what the defense does more than anything else.
The idea you put out there at the start there about more 11 personnel is kind of an interesting one, and I guess every podcast is someone's first, so let's define what 11 personnel is. When we talk about a personnel grouping, when you hear a number like 11, the first number is the number of running backs on the field, the second number is the number of tight ends on the field, and then the third unspoken number is 5, which is the number of eligible receivers you would have on a play, minus the first two numbers. So 11 personnel is 1 running back, 1 tight end, and then there are 3 receivers. If you have 12 personnel, which you saw a decent amount of from Ohio State in recent years, that's 1 running back, 2 tight ends, 2 receivers. So when he's talking about 11 personnel, that just means more 3 wide receiver sets. And without maybe Mitch Rossi to fill that kind of, blocking / fullback type role in the power run game, you might see more 11 personnel, which is, so then you're going to get fewer opportunities for that second tight end. They're not exactly peppering that second tight end with the pass attempts, even when they are playing a bunch of 12 personnel. So yeah, that's an interesting idea because they always want to have their best, your best 11 on the field. And if you feel like there's a drop off from that first tight end to the second tight end, there really is not much of a drop off in that wide receiver room from 2 to 3 or 3 to 4, feels like. So that's going to be an opportunity for maybe more of those wide receivers to play. So that is an interesting thought there.
Well, and G. Scott also presents an opportunity for them to kind of go 12, 11, because he can play that receiver role as well, but can also then you can go no huddle and he can move on to the line and play tight end and just move around. So maybe that's something else that they try to use as well. But let's move on to the receivers and just mention who is in early this spring in terms of the freshmen. Carnell Tate, Noah Rogers, and Bryson Rogers are all 3 in. Brandon Ennis won't be in until June. So that's unfortunate because with Emeka Egbuka out, the slot position is pretty open right now. But also, can we put together a depth chart, Tom? Because we've tried to do this over the years, and the X receiver position has kind of always been a bugaboo until you have a prototype like Marvin Harrison, and then it's like, yes, he's that guy. But because in the past we've slotted Jamison Williams at Z, we put Garrett Wilson at Z and H, and both of those guys end up starting like their first year at X. For some reason, Brian Hartline's a cuckoo crazy. But like, I don't know who the number 2 guy, who is behind Marvin Harrison at this point. I have no idea.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it, I don't know if they know who's behind Marvin Harrison. I mean, they may have a sense that, hey, we're thinking about this guy, but what is your degree of certainty on, how sure are you that this is going to be the guy who's going to be the backup at X at the start of, the start of the Indiana game in September? I would guess that the answer is not super high because you haven't seen, you've got the 3 guys who played last year, who started last year. You've got, Harrison and Ibuka and Fleming. So, okay, those are your starters. You got Xavier Johnson, who's really not an X. I don't feel like that's probably where he's going to slot in the most. You've got Jaden Ballard, who feels like a Z to me. So who is that second X? And, Caleb Brown is someone I think we've heard about and talked about a bunch. I don't know that I feel like he's a natural fit at X. Brandon Innes is the one who I think, if you ask the average person who is going to be the first person on that freshman class to maybe hit the two deep and make an impact, you're going to hear a lot about Brandon Innes, but he's potentially going to be inside. So you could kind of pick a name out of a hat at this point and, say, sure, any one of the second year guys, any one of the first year guys who maybe is sort of an immediate impact guy could be that backup at X. But, if Marvin Harrison's healthy, I don't think you're taking Marvin Harrison off the field that much. So this may be one of these problems that isn't really that much of a problem. But I really genuinely do wonder if they really, do they really have a strong sense who that's going to be? Because I think really the answer might be, ask again after the spring.
Well, and whoever that is going to have a bunch of opportunities during the spring because you don't need to do too much with Marvin Harrison. And so it may be a bunch of guys. And it will probably, Brian Hartline will put everybody everywhere. So like everybody's going to run through that position just about. I think I've put maybe Kojo Antwi there before just because he is maybe the least of the Z's or H's of that class to me, because you've got Keon Grays and Caleb Burton. I think both have Z qualities, Caleb Burton in that slot. But like I said, they'll be moving all around. Now, by the end of spring, I'm not going to be shocked if it's a Carnell Tate or a Noah Rogers. So I think those two guys are going to have some positive moments in the spring. And Carnell Tate, kind of I've compared him to Michael Thomas. He is close to that prototype of the X receiver. But are you expecting to have one of these freshmen just like blow you away? Like if I ask you, who are you looking forward to watching most at wide receiver? If we just put that to the freshmen, because we go back to seeing Garrett Wilson and seeing Jackson Smith and Jigba that first time, like, are you expecting something like that this time around?
I don't think that necessarily. I think I'm interested. I'm really intrigued to see Carnell Tate because you keep hearing about him and how athletic he is and what a playmaker he is. And I think he could be that guy. Maybe of the three guys in for the spring, he might be the top of that list for me. But, if we're broadening it out to just anyone this spring, who are you most interested to see? I think Jaden Ballard is still at that top of the list for me because he feels like, this is someone who has been there a couple of years. You've sort of seen some flashes. He had that 72-yard touchdown last year against Toledo. And it feels like that's a spot where, if Julian Fleming is not on the field, he could really be an impact guy at that Z spot for him. I think that's pretty intriguing to me. But of the true freshmen, Innes, obviously, you've seen and heard enough about that. He's someone who feels like he could make an impact at some point this year, but not being in for the spring. I think I'd go with Carnell Tate there. What about you?
Well, if you're going to take Tate, I guess I will take Noah Rogers, and then we can both congratulate Bryson Rogers for making every play this spring. Good job. Good job, rookie. I like both of those guys and being bigger receivers. We'll see, because I don't know who is a Z, who is an X in that situation. And Brian Hartline, you try to throw these questions out to him, and he not that he plays dumb, but it's like I don't know who is an X. What is an X type? What does a Z do? Like, he throws it back at you and it challenges your notions, and then comes out with like Garrett Wilson or Jameson Williams in places you wouldn't expect, and then turns out they're doing okay. And so it always, at times, it feels like just a fool's errand to try to put names into positions when who even knows where they are in that position just yet in terms of getting guys into spots. And is it dumb? Is it foolish to think like that you can put a depth chart together without actually seeing those guys at those positions this spring? Like, you're gonna have to start somewhere. So obviously there will be something, but this is as malleable receiving room, I think, in terms of a depth chart that we've probably seen in some time.
Well, it feels like they've kind of stopped recruiting the little tiny short guy who can only play in the inside, and they haven't recruited the Elijah Gardner 6'6" guy who's very clearly going to be the X guy. Go up and get it. In terms of recruiting philosophy, it's a lot of 6 foot to 6'2", maybe 6'3", and then you got a guy who's 5'11" every once in a while. But it's just, you don't have the 5'8" guys, you don't have the 6'6" guys really anymore, the Jalen Harris types. Brian Hartline wants these guys to be able to play a little bit of everywhere, and so that means you're not recruiting a body type that is really specifically tailored for one spot and not another. And they want to cross-train them, they want to be able to be flexible, and sometimes Emeka Egbuka plays in the slot, and sometimes Emeka Egbuka plays outside, and that makes it much harder for the defense to scheme up to stop a specific guy, and also makes it easier for Ohio State to potentially scheme up to get a specific matchup they're looking for. So as a result of that, you've got a bunch of guys who are kind of similar physique-wise, size-wise, kind of similar athleticism-wise, and then it all adds up to making this a little more complicated from our end before we've seen these guys and seen where they're working them and seen these guys on the field in any kind of meaningful way to know where these guys will all kind of fit. We kind of have thoughts right now, but spring ball starts on March 7th, and we'll be there and we'll get to watch and we'll learn a whole bunch, and maybe we'll know a little bit more after that day. But even then, the first week or so of a spring ball, it's just we're just throwing guys in a bunch of different spots. And why are all the corners playing safety? Why are all the safeties playing corner? Like, well, they just want to see if they can do it, and if they can't, then they'll be right back where they started tomorrow. And so it'll be a little bit of an ongoing thing just for us to kind of track and keep an eye on as the spring moves along.
The first practice of spring is always fun because it's your first real information about the team, but it's the real only information. And so like all of you want to make, not you and me, like we are reasonable. Everybody else wants to make judgments based on what they've seen and what's going on. And it's like, this is one of 15 practices, one of 2 camps. There's going to be, it's sandwiching an entire off season of strength training and individual work and stuff like that. But there are still guys who transcend that. And you're like, oh, well, this guy is Jackson Smith and Jigba. Nobody else is. So there's always that opportunity as well. So that's the fun part about it. And I'm assuming we'll probably go live after that practice on that Tuesday and tell you everything that we saw and make sweeping, broad judgments. And one of my predictions, and it goes into who benefits most from Fleming and Egbuka being out, it's going to be the spring of Jaden Ballard. I think we're going to be talking about Jaden Ballard provided they throw the ball. After that practice, we're going to be talking about Jaden Ballard. I'm going to be talking about him either way, and it may not be good. There may be plenty of, he dropped like 4 passes, and it's clear why he hasn't been playing. Or it's going to be like, look out, this is going to be a big year for Jaden Ballard.
Yeah, this is, you never want to draw too many conclusions from that first practice, but I remember when you walked out of the first practice last year, loudly saying, 8-4, get ready for the Outback Bowl, and I'm like, Tony, please. They changed sponsors this year. I don't remember who it was, but it's not the Outback Bowl anymore. Please, have some respect.
Did they beat Michigan?
I don't remember. I'd have to go back and check.
So, and also, not having Emeka in the slot, I think, obviously, Xavier Johnson, I'll keep going back to Caleb Brown. I'm interested to see where everybody else slots in there as well. But other than Jaden Ballard, I think we would agree he benefits most. And knowing what Xavier Johnson does, like, who is the next in line that benefits most from those 2 guys being out, do you think?
Well, I think the guy who is most clearly or most likely perhaps to be at the H spot is Caleb Brown. And, if you're sort of assuming that, you're sort of filing Xavier Johnson in the 2000 rep club where maybe he's not getting as many reps as he otherwise would as the number 1 H this spring with Emeka Egbuka out. I guess I would say Caleb Brown is kind of the next on the list because he is, from that next group, the guy who maybe feels like he's at the top of the heap right now, so therefore he would be sort of the next one to benefit. And, you know, so you got Jaden Ballard at Z because Fleming's out, and you got Xavier Johnson and Caleb Brown at H because Abuka's out, and then, you know, as we said, sort of fill in the blank because how much are they going to, at X, because how much are they going to rep Marvin Harrison? Probably not that much.
Yeah, that's I'm with you as well. I think Caleb Brown and Jaden Ballard are set for big springs, and it's almost maybe a little unfortunate for the quarterbacks battling for the starting job to be down 2 starters, and then for, like, you know, whoever, like if one of these guys gets Marvin Harrison like 80% of the time just by chance, just by the way repetitions are, it's like you gave me, you know, Reese Stocksdale, and, you know, Kyle got Marvin Harrison. How's that fair? You know, well, it'll even out, but if it, like, I'd be the quarterback, like, mentally, like, this is not evening out. I'd be like counting like 3, 4, 5, like, I'm not getting Marvin again. It's eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Like, it's never lining up for me. I feel like maybe it's time to transfer.
And that's why Jim Harbaugh should not be in charge of Ohio State's wide receiver reps this spring. That is my big takeaway there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. As we said, March 7th, first day of spring practice. We are expecting to be there. We have not been, has not been confirmed. It's just been rumored. I don't know if Ryan Day knows this or not, but now he knows. Listening to this, we are expecting to be there. Surprise! So we are looking forward to that. No reason for us not to be. It's not like this is going to. You don't want Indiana to know what happened on spring practice number 1. It's nothing like that. So I hope we are there. Tom, anything else before we go?
No, just very much looking forward to, you know, we're 3 weeks away from that now. So very much looking forward to being back in there and getting going again on covering spring ball. It's always, you know, it always feels like there's a lot of anticipation for spring ball, and then you go into the first practice, then you walk out and it's like, all right, everything's settled, right? It's like, well, no, but we walk out knowing more than we knew walking in, which is, you know, that this is progress, and that's what spring is all about.
Yeah, it's like any time you've ever like unpacked anything, we'll unpack that practice, and it's just like, well, this is a mess. When you unpack something, it's just it's everywhere. This is a complete mess. Now we got to piece it back together. So look forward to that. I want to thank you all for joining us. As always, you can find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Become a premium member. Say hello to us there on the message board. Also, you can find us at YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Check out, you know, Alex and Mark have been doing, Alex Gleitman, Mark Giverler are doing a daily premium recruiting notebook right now. Well, not right now, just Monday through Friday. You should check that out. Insights, updates on daily recruiting for the Buckeyes. Well worth the price of admission right there. So check that out. I want to thank you all again, and we'll talk to you guys later.